All right, welcome back. Today it is week 6, day 2. This is video 26. Today we're going to do cylinder UV unwrapping. This is our 4th video in our UV series, and basically today we're going to talk about how you unwrap cylinders. So we've talked so far a lot about boxes, right? We had dice and stuff like that. But today we're actually going to start with some files. We're going to start with this can, this soda can, or pop can if we're up north. The point is, we're going to start with this. If you need these files, which you probably do, you can make this can if you want. But if you don't want to make the can, you could just go with the one I have. You can find, as always, you can find the files that you need in the description of the video. There's a little link down there that takes you to a Google Drive that has all of the files you'll need, which include the label that we're going to use, the top that we're going to use, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So with that in mind, we're going to get started. So to understand how we do this is very important, because understanding unwrapping a cylinder is probably one of the most important things you need to do besides planar mapping. So we've talked before about when we made things, how we're going to unwrap them. We need to think about that. Well, this situation is different from what we had before. Our last object, our crate, was just 6 sides, and this actually has 342 sides, 342 polys roughly. So that is a lot more edges. So we can't do what we did before and like select individual faces. We actually have to do something a little more thoughtful, okay? Now, we're actually never going to use cylindrical mapping by itself, or at least very rarely, because almost every cylinder you see has a top and a bottom, which means a cylindrical wrapping grabs faces like this and then grabs all of them around like that, and then it maps them according to that. So imagine you have a camera, okay? So imagine you have a camera that's projecting on the image from every single direction in a 360-degree view all the time, and that's how you're getting your image on there. So it's almost like spray paint. It's sprayed at a specific angle, except it's an image. So if we were to use an image on this, I'm going to bring in one of our images just for examples, okay? So let's go ahead, and you can watch this. You don't really need to do this, but I'm going to create a material. I'm going to go back into my slate. I'm going to create a material. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to bring in the can. You don't have to do this yet, but scan line, standard. Okay, so I'm going to grab this material, okay, and I'm creating, I already created this material, it's no big deal. So from the left view, I'm going to grab all of these side images, or all these side faces, okay, just like that. Now that's from every single direction. Now if I planar map this like I did before, I actually got to add the Unwrap Modifier on there first. Unwrap Modifier, and then I'm going to go to faces and left view. I'm going to grab all the faces that I want to be, I want the can to be colored. Oh. See this square? Since I have this selected, it wouldn't let me adjust anything above it. Yes, we're going to do that. Okay, cool. Wait, it should let go. Yes. Let go? Okay, good. All right, here we are. So what I want to do is I'm going to grab these faces right here. Boom. Okay, if I were to planar map these with the material that I have, if I hit planar map, I go into my UV editor, I have ignore back facing was on. All right, so let's try that again. Just grab all these. Cool. Planar map from X. Sure. Cool. So now what I've done is I've planar mapped the entire side this way, okay? If I slap a material onto this now, like we did before, I'm going to take all of this stuff and get it out of the way. So I swear I turned ignore back facing off. That may have been a bug, or maybe I screwed it up. I don't know. Okay, planar map. There. Okay. So, all right. So there we go. So the entire side here, I want to turn the grid off, is planar map, or is planar mapped, and it looks like this. If I want to add a material to that, I can close this, hit M, pull up my material. This should be selected. I can then make show viewport and then slide it. So now what I've done is I've added my material, but what it does is it looks fine from one angle, kind of, but it also looks like it mirrors itself, and it's really weird, and it doesn't actually show the way we want it to. And that is not going to be okay. We want to make sure that we have it so that it wraps around it, like wrapping paper. Okay, wrapping paper, in a way, when you wrap a cylindrical object, you have a square piece of paper that you need to wrap around it. So that's basically what cylindrical mapping is. We take cylindrical mapping, first we grab our UV modifier, grab faces, we have this selected, and then we open UV editor so we can see what's going on. So instead of doing this, we are actually going to cylindrical wrap it, which is this button here. Cylindrical, and then in this case we're going to do it along Z, because Z is the up and down direction of this image. Now you can see it already looks better, significantly better, because what it's done is it's automatically wrapped that around in a cylindrical manner. Okay, so we can take this now. So you double click that, now I can adjust it. Go to tools, and what we need to do is relax it, because it automatically sets it to square, but we want it to relax so that it's actually the right size. You'll notice, stop, relax, that now everything is properly sized, although we do have a weird seam problem here, right? We have the issue is that here the image is not set up properly. And we'll close that. I want to maximize this. And I'm also going to reset our texture list and then grab map 2. So it automatically squishes it, but realistically this image is not what we want. We want it to stay square. So let's go back to our checker pattern. But we know we want this to fit like that. We also know that these two edges have been broken. Now remember, last time we just broke all the edges and moved them around, but realistically what we want to do is keep as many edges together. The reason is when you actually go to work with them, that the images or the faces will stick together and they'll make a lot more sense. So we're going to grab these edges individually and stitch them back together. This is kind of like sewing. So we're going to take this and we're going to come over here, and there's stitch to target, stitch to average, stitch to source, or stitch custom. So I generally do stitch to average, and then we'll relax the whole thing again. So the tool that we use often, especially in Polygon, so grab all your polygons, go to tools, relax by polygon angles, and start relax. And you'll see there's also, I've got another issue down here. Right? I've got to grab this little vert and move it and find out. Okay, so obviously something's not right over here, right? We've got a weird pinchiness. Grab one there. You can see that this face was all oddly adjusted. So we need to grab this edge here, right there, and then stitch to average. So what we would really like is a nice rectangle, because even though it creates distortion at the top, it would still be better for our art team, our 2D art team. And a lot of times that's what we'll try and do, sort of balance the difference between the 2D and distortion. So to make it easier to make the label for this, I want to go ahead and create this as a rectangle. And we can actually do that by going up here and adjusting some of these settings here. You can relax things to straighten selection, and then you can relax them out. Or relax until flat is also pretty good. So tools, we've got our relax tool. We start relax again, and that's pretty good. So as we have adjusted this, we're getting these odd squares. Now if we adjust this further, you can see that the squares shift. I'm going to grab all of them, all of them, and then I'm going to show you. As I squeeze this together, those squares become rectangles. Okay, and if I shift it apart, they become smaller rectangles in the opposite direction. What we want is we want perfect squares, or at least as close to perfect squares as we can get. That looks pretty square. There's always going to be a seam. A seam is where one edge cuts and the other edge starts. Okay, so if I click on just this, you'll notice it's at the very edge of my material. If I click on this one, it's at the other side of the material. There's always going to be seams in your models. The idea is that you want to put them in places where the seam's going to be the least noticeable. In this case, I've already done that with the material for you, and we'll talk about that later when we get more into materials. But for now, I created this so that there's a red area without any writing where the seam will go. Now you can adjust where the seam lives by clicking on this and then hitting E and then rotating the gizmo. So we're basically changing where the seam and how this thing is lined up. Okay, now I've already stitched this together, so I don't want to actually adjust it right now. But you can see that the seam is living here where there is no material or no texture. And you also see that right now it's way too big, so we'll have to fix it, but you get the idea. So what we want to do is we're going to end up making a material for this out of this, not this bitmap, but eventually we'll make our own. I'm going to delete that for now, and I'm going to bring in one of mine that I already made for now, just so we have an idea of what it's going to look like at the end. So if I add that here, hit M, make sure I apply that to the model. Make sure the model is selected. That'll help. Apply to the model. Show in viewport. There we go. So that's a little bit better. The material that I was bringing in before was not fully complete because this is just sort of an example. No, I'm going to go to the UV editor. So if I reset the, maybe that'll work. Nope, it won't. I have to reset texture list and then go to map 3. Okay, so now you can see this is the material that's very similar to the one we're going to make in a bit. All right, we need to make sure that there's no writing on the edge and that our edge goes all the way to the edge, that our model is working all the way to the edge. Over here are some tools that are really helpful. This one is select by element. So that means if I select this, I get the entire thing every time, which is really helpful. I'm going to hold control as I move this. Because if I select by element, then I know that I'm not going to accidentally run into, miss one of these faces and then have to redo it later. Move that down. Okay, cool. Now, as I said before, you'll never just use this process. You'll always have to do some more adjustments. So for instance, I'm going to grab the entire center section, right, and I'm going to grow it here until I get to the silver part. I want that bottom section to be silver. Right? So all of this I'm going to cylindrical map. Now you'll notice that this is much thinner than that, but we don't have, so there's going to be some distortion in the checker map. So if I go back to the checker map is automatically square, but you'll notice as it gets in here it turns into rectangles. Okay, I'm going to cylindrical map this from Z because it's up and down. Then I'm going to adjust this, and you can actually, you don't necessarily always have to relax. It's helpful sometimes, but you don't always have to. So I'm going to take this, and shrink it down. You'll notice that I'm trying to get squares. Once I get that in someplace I'm happy with, a little bit of space there, a little bit of space there, there. It looks pretty square. And I've gotten all my other edges in there. Now, on the bottom, I'm going to actually grab these. That's probably enough. I could probably grow it from there. So I'm going to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. So all of this is going to be silver. Now this cannot be planar map because it's basically a flat area. So I'm going to, oh, I meant cylindrical. It has to be planar mapped. So I'm going to planar map it, and then I get this circle. Now this circle needs to be relaxed because there's pinches and hills and valleys and stuff, and I want it to be flat. So mapping, or I'm sorry, tools, relax, over here, start relax. Okay, notice it twisted out on me. That's because it was inverted to begin with. So I'm going to undo that. When something's inverted, that means it was mapped from the wrong direction. Now, the maps always come from the positive direction. So in this case, the map's coming down from Z because it's a Z-based map. Because I have to select the direction it's coming from. So that means I need to flip it, which is this button right here. So if I flip it like that, you can't really tell, but it's actually flipped upside down now, or actually right side out. So now when I select this and I go to Tools and Relax, Start Relax, it just flattens out. You'll notice that now I have squares on the bottom. They're very big or very tiny squares, which means that I'm using a lot of the resolution. The image is really big, and that's not what I want. I want it something more like this, because I have to fit it inside with the other pieces that we have, like that. Now I need to do the same thing for the top. Once again, I'm going to grab a bunch of these and see if I expand it, if it works for me. Alright, expand. Oops. Expand. There we go. I think I got almost all of them. Now this is going to be all the silver part of the top. I'll expand it again, again, and one more time. Good. Right? Now because this is coming from the top direction, you won't have to flip it. But we are going to planar map from Z. It creates a circle. And now we are going to take that circle, double click the plane button to make sure we get it, and then we're going to shrink it so it will fit inside our area. Now, as I said before, I've already created a material for you, but you're going to create your own here in a minute, but I'm just going to show you quickly how it's going to look. This material is already built, so we can take this and make sure it lines up. All we need to do is make sure it fits inside the area that we have available, and that it doesn't go outside of the gray or whatever we have already decided. So let's move it up a little bit. Alright, so there we go. At this point, I've created the material. I've used coloring, the coloring system to adjust it. I believe I relaxed that, didn't I? No, now it is. Alright, so now it's relaxed, and now we have our soda can. Alright, so the material itself was wrapped around it appropriately. I made sure that the seam is, I believe, in here somewhere, like there. Maybe right here. It should have been here, but it's not. The point is, the idea of this is what's important. I'm going to turn off edge faces. Alright. There. So we can sort of see what it looks like. There we go. If we added a better modifier to it so it looked a little more real, obviously it would help if we had a bump on top, but you get the idea. The cylindrical mapping is really important. Cylindrical mapping and planar mapping are 90% of what I use when I'm mapping. The other 10% is like a mixture of like just selecting faces and planar mapping them individually. The other types of maps I hardly ever use because they're just generally not very efficient, and I can get away with the tools that I have. So those are your two main ways to add materials to the object. Now realistically, you can use my material for now, but you're going to want to actually do this process with your own unwrapping system. So you're going to have to create your own can this week. So you can use this video again to sort of see exactly how I did the process, but ideally you're going to select your object and you're going to unwrap your object. So unwrap UV, select your object, open up your UV editor, and you're going to want your own coloring book, just like this. Okay, now I've added pieces into the I've added the can top. I went ahead and took a picture and edited that stuff together. There's the orthographic, you won't need that, and the label. But everything else is just basic silver, or like a gray color. And ideally, that is what you're going to do. You're going to make your own unwrapping system where it's nice and straight and laid out. And then after that, you're going to planar map the tops, and then you can create your own soda can image in Photoshop. You can look at mine as an example and build your own. Right? Understanding how cylindrical mapping and this system works is extremely important, and you will be using it forever. So I wish you the best of luck, and if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time.